Okay, here we are on Metal Talk, and it gives me great pleasure to be in company of Adrian Vandenberg.
Thank you.
Who on February 24th brings out a brand new album, his first album in 17 years, and it's Vandenberg's MOONKINGS.
Was that about bloody time or what?
It certainly is. And how are you, Adrian?
I'm doing excellent. Yeah, it may sound like a cliche to some people, but I'm so happy to be back in England. You know, it's where all my past comes from musically, and I used to spend a lot of time in England with family of mine. I live in Hereford, and my aunt got kidnapped by a British pilot right after the war. Good move. And they moved over here, so I used to go here for holidays and stuff, you know, when I was a kid, and all my musical influence come from here, so it's so good to be here, you know.
Fantastic.
On a sunny day too.
Well, it's sunny enough.
Yeah, well, you know, when
it's been raining all day yesterday, so you brought the sunshine with you. And let's talk about the album, because it is your first album in 17 years. And
yeah.
First and foremost, why have you gone for the moniker MOONKINGS rather than just Vandenberg?
Well, first of all, I didn't want to be automatically classified as classic rock, although it's an honorable title. But at the same time, I tried to build a bridge between my roots in 70s music to the dynamics and the directness of stuff like Foo Fighters or whatever. You know, I wanted to be in your face and not woolly and stuff. That was one thing, and also I really like challenges, and I thought it would have been easier to do that stuff. And the fact that it's called Vandenberg MOONKINGS is basically was a very polite, though, question with a little bit of pressure from a record company. They said, well, you know, it's going to be just a little easier, you know, because to get some attention in the beginning, because it's a brand new band, you know, it's new stuff. And so when I designed the logo, I made the Vandenberg very small so I can sneak it out over the next couple of years.
Now let's talk about the band, because in England there's sort of unknown musicians. So tell us about the guys you've got on the album. Yeah,
that is an interesting story, because, you know, one thing that bothers me, a lot of people have been asking me, especially through Facebook and stuff, you know, why didn't you go with, why don't you go, was actually it, because I didn't review anything from last year, and a lot of people were asking me why I didn't do start with Glenn Hughes or with this or with that, and start another super group, you know. For me, super groups are it's a little bit of a boring, predictable concept, because as good as it usually is, when I read the names I know how it's going to sound. I also know that it's going to fall apart after 1 or 2 albums because the ego clashes and stuff, and you know, 5 different managers and all that.
That's happened with Glenn Hughes and Backcountry Communion. So.
yeah, so you know, and I like challenges. I like going the unpredictable path, and I thought it would be so cool to come up with totally unknown guys. I got 2 really young guys, and the 2 are 23, and I made them win 2 talent contests 10 years ago when they were 13. They were playing like amazing seasoned musicians, and they weren't, you know, and they're so talented that I thought it would be so cool to bring those guys with me, form a new band, new name, new music. You know, the past is great, and but I'm more like a look to the future kind of guy, and the challenge is just more exciting to me.
And you've got a great singer. Tell me his name, please.
Jan. Is that an amazing singer or what? You know, it's like one of the things I put on my personal thanks to list on the album. The first one is thanks to Good Karma for throwing these guys into my lap in such a almost metaphysical way. You know, it's Jan. I always jump on stage when I'm with when Whitesnake is in Holland, and sometimes in Germany or Sweden as well. And 2 or 3 years ago, Whitesnake played again in Holland, and David calls me up usually beforehand, you know, always actually, and so I went to the show, and of course, you know, I hang with David and chat, because we don't see each other more than once a year or something, and so I didn't see the support act, and 2 weeks later I read a review in the leading Dutch rock magazine, and it says the support act had a fantastic singer. And I needed a singer for a song that I was asked to write for my local soccer team, FC Twente. We actually sold 2 guys to British teams.
Let's get onto that in a second.
That's the nice guys we are, you know. You give us a bunch of sheep and the cheese and some Stilton and stuff, and we're happy, and here's our football players. Anyway, I wrote a stadium anthem quite inspired by Queen, of course, because it's the ultimate stadium anthem, of course. And so I needed a singer for that, and I suddenly remembered that review, and I wrote a mail. I kind of tracked him down. It was hard because his band appeared to be split up. And the second thing that made it hard is that he thought somebody was joking, because he was a big fan and a Whitesnake fan, and he always went to the shows and stuff. And I thought, why would Adrian Vandenberg ask me? So he didn't even react. And that took 3 weeks. And then he told me later, he started thinking, what about if it wasn't a joke? I would be stupid. So he wrote back 1 or 2 lines, very, you know, careful and stuff. And so I met with him, and the meeting itself takes 1.5 hours to describe because it was a stupid thing. I should have gone on the road, because in the morning the radio warned that if you don't necessarily have to be on the road, don't go. And of course I went. When somebody tells me not to do something, I do it. So Jan has got a big farm. Jan has got a huge farm, like 120 acres and stuff, and he's in the middle of nowhere. No street lamps, and there were trees fell across the street, cars by the side of the road. So it took a long time. I was 2 hours late. So when he opened the door, he had a pretty serious alcohol breath, and he said, "Oh, sorry, man. I thought it was a joke, and I thought, you know." So my girlfriend and I decided to down a whole bottle of port. So I was 2 hours late, you know. And he said, "Come in." So we got on great right away. Also because of the port, of course. Yeah. But and he was the guy, you know. He started singing that song that I wrote for the FC20 tune, and I thought, man, I'm gonna go with this guy. And
I think what's great about him, he's got that great sort of classic rock vocal range, and one of the he is. I wouldn't say to sound like David Coverdale, but he can hit the high notes like Coverdale.
Oh yeah. It's amazing, you know, and those were his heroes, you know, guys like still are. Coverdale, Ron James Dio, Steve Marriott, early Rod Stewart with the faces and stuff, you know. Those are his guys, and when he grew up, he's mid-30s or something, that kind of stuff was not done, because you were supposed to be able not to sing in the grunge period and not to be able to play and stuff. So I see the same thing with the drum and the bass player, the 23-year-old, but their heroes are guys like John Bonham and Dave Grohl, you know, and guys that can actually play. Otherwise, as a musician, you know, if you wouldn't be able to play your instrument. And
let's talk about sort of the sound of the album. It's sort of like heavy rock blues. It's quite sort of similar to the sound of like a Restless Heart album, the last time you worked with David Coverdale. It's a similar sort of vein, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more. It's got more energy, I think, you know. But
definitely.
My music has always been British heavy blues rock based. You know, all my heroes are, you know, the guys from Zeppelin, Free, early Faces, you name them, you know, the Humble Pie, that's all my stuff. And this time, when I started writing, I kept all the windows and doors open. I thought, I don't give a... I'm not supposed to say that word, probably. I don't know what it's like. I didn't give a fuck about what happened in my mind when I was writing. I just wanted to let all the influences filter through, whether it was Zeppelin or Humble Pie or Hendrix or whatever. Anything goes, because that's how it should go in rock and roll, I think, you know. In rock and roll, anything should go. So I wrote that album, and as soon as Jan started singing it and the guys were playing it, and I wanted it to sound really fresh, in your face, like you're sitting 3 feet away from the stage at the band rehearsal. No polishing and reverb and stuff, you know, no compression. And I recorded it through really crappy old amplifiers, you know. Actually, what's interesting is I used the 7th Marshall that was ever built by Jim Marshall himself. Oh, wow. It doesn't even look like a Marshall, it looks like a bread toaster. And with a felt tip magic marker on the back he wrote Jim Marshall. And it looks weird, you know. And
did he give that to you personally? Or?
No, it belongs to the owner of the studio where I recorded, and he's a collector, you know. So he's got all this stuff. I used a Vox from 1961 where John Lennon reportedly played on, and a Marshall number 11 something, that's like a year later when he started to make more Marshalls, soldering his way through in the middle of the night, and that kind of stuff, you know. So I wanted that in-your-face sound, and not the perfect sound that everybody has been using the last 20 years, you know.
And when the album was completed, how was the feeling for you? Because it has been a long time, you've sort of been away from the record business for about 17 years almost.
Right, yeah, it's like, I used that time to clear my mind. I actually didn't really play at all, pretty much, over the last...
And why was that? Was it disillusionment, boredom, or...?
No, it was, first of all, I decided that after we stopped Whitesnake basically in 1999, I decided I wanted to catch up with painting because I was an artist before the music thing happened, because I never had the illusion with my kind of music, which is this, that I would be able to make a living in Holland. You know, forget it. Holland is mainly known for producing crap music. We do that very well, so I didn't want to be associated with that.
But thank God did, alright, he gave you some inspiration.
That was one important reason. The other thing was that a daughter was born with one of my ex-girlfriends, and we split up 3 years later, just around the time where I thought, well, you know, it's about time to record again, and I didn't want to be one of those dads that never sees his kids, or his kids never see him, you know, pop your head around the...
And was the daughter living near you?
Yeah, she's living in my hometown with her mom, and I had a chance, I was given the chance, you know, to watch her grown up, and now she's 14, and now she will understand, and she does understand what I'm doing, you know. I keep texting all the time, I'm in London, oh, I want to be in London too, you know, so I'm going to be able to bring her over whenever the opportunity presents itself, you know, so that was the reason. The other reason was that I really wanted to empty my hard disk in the back of my mind of all the formulas that got involved in the music business, because I wanted to make a record that I'm dying to buy myself, but they don't get made a lot, you know. And I thought, you know, if I don't please myself with the record, I can't expect anybody else to like it. So, and that needed some clearing also. So those three common.
So was the album written over 17 years, or are they all like brand new songs that totally fresh?
It's all new, yeah, it's all new stuff. I wrote it over the last year and a half, and actually sometimes I didn't write anything for a month and a half or something, and I spent quite some time to get the most out of Jan, the singer, because I knew he could do stuff that he didn't even know himself, because he played in bar bands and stuff before that, you know, and occasionally a little gig, and he never got pushed by a band, because I heard some recordings of his former bands and it sounded lame, and then he heard this great voice on top of that, and he didn't have like something to bounce back off, you know, and that was my instinctive feeling, so I started pushing him and coaching him a little bit more, and he started surprising himself. He came back, you know, in my little home studio and listened to what we just recorded, and I go, oh, is that me? I go, yeah, and it's going to go further. He goes, oh, we'll see. And he, you know, he's amazing. He turned into one of my favourite singers.
Fantastic. And obviously you just mentioned, like, you know, not only an artist as a musician, but an artist as a painter, a very good one. And you've done all your artwork for your album covers, and you've done your artwork for this album as well.
Yeah, I designed a logo and a couple of symbols, you know. I came on the MOONKINGS name, and because I realized as a musician you operate at nights, and usually when I write at home I work at nights too, and when there's a clear moon I always leave the curtains open and switch off as many lamps as I can get away with. And so I thought, hey, it would be a nice connection, but if you call it the Moon Dwarfs it would sound a little lame, so I thought, you know, MOONKINGS, that adds some power to it, you know, so it's a Kings of the Night type of thing, and I had an idea for the logo in mind right away, which is like a tribal symbol of the sun, and an owl, which is like the ultimate night creature, flying away from the sun into the night, which is where you are. So I put that behind the logo, and I had a lot of discussions with the record company because they have their own designer, but it used to be my job too, you know, so I said, I'm sorry man, but I want to do it myself, and so he was a little bit...
I'd say it's a striking logo, and it stands really out, and it's simple but very effective. And is that something you do on like in your private life? Do you design like logos for corporate companies
I used to, yeah. When I was making a living as an artist before Vandenberg became successful, I worked for a short while at an advertising agency, making illustrations and designing that stuff. And I did art university in Holland before Vandenberg, so I made it was my living.
Fantastic, and
so
you could always go back to.
Yeah, actually, I hope not, but this way I can combine it, which is really nice. So I have a very clear picture of what I like, you know, which was a little bit of a nuisance for the designer for a mascot, but you know, life's a bitch, and then you marry one.
On the album, the very last track, you've sort of gone back to be called Sailing Ships, Slip of the Tongue album with David Coverdale, and you sort of stuck to the original arrangement, but obviously it's a fantastic song.
Thank you, yeah.
Why have you gone back to be called that song exactly?
Well, David was pushing me over the last 10 years. Every time I had him on the phone and when we saw each other, he said, "Come on, you lazy Dutchman, make an album." I said, "Yeah, the time is not right, you know, I've got things that I would like to do first and blah, blah." And so about a year and a half or 2 years ago, no, a year and a half, I told him on the phone, I said, "David, you know, you're going to be a happy guy because I'm working towards an album." "Oh, great." And he said, "Well, it would be an honor for me if you let me sing a track on your album." I said, "Well, the honor would be entirely mine also, you know." So he was going to go on the road, and he has been on the road up until a couple of weeks ago. And so I talked to him on the phone and I said, "Well, I would love to do Sailing Ships because first of all, we don't have the time and the opportunity to write a new song together, and also I always wanted to do another version of it because it is one of my favorite songs that I've ever written." And on the Slip of the Tongue album, I wasn't able to play it because I had a wrist injury, and for my taste, it became a little bit overproduced. You know, it was very busy, and although it's good, but it's not necessarily. I meant it as a blues rocky type of thing, at least.
Obviously, yeah, you could make the album. Steve Vai came in, and it was made here, there, and everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it turned out great, you know, but I really wanted to redo the song and make it a little bit more melancholic and reflective, and it came in very handy that David was all jet lagged and stuff, and he was going to have to go into knee surgery the day after because he messed up his knee during the tour. So there was only a window of pretty much one day, and so I had him on the phone, and he sounded a little jet lagged. He said, "I'm not sure," you know. So I said, "Your voice sounds perfect for this, you know, because I want that late afternoon melancholic vibe, something," and he did the signature beautiful soulful Coverdale vocal on it, so I was really happy, you know.
So you're one of the few guitarists in Whitesnake that's always kept a good relationship with David Coverdale.
Yeah.
And he wanted you to join long before 1987, but obviously he was busy with Vandenberg.
Yeah.
And you came in sort of at the most controversial time of Whitesnake. He sort of set the whole band. He brought the Pretty Boys in, yourself included.
Yeah.
And I think not a lot of people realise, but you did actually play on Here I Go Again, because that sort of remix, and that's your guitar solo that people hear on the radio. Sort of, it's up there with Smoke and Water. It's one of those songs that people air guitar to, or karaoke clubs. So, does that make you proud when you hear that song on the radio?
I think it's great, you know, because what happened was John Kolodner, who was the A&R guy for Geffen Records, where David just signed, called me up and he said, "I would like to make an offer for a new contract for Vandenberg, because I managed to get rid of the contract with Atlantic at the time because Phil Carson, the head over here, left Atlantic, and I thought, well, if he's gone, you know, there's no feeling anymore. And anyway, so he said, "I would like to fly you to LA and talk to you about it." So I arrived in LA, and Kolodner said, "Well, there's actually two things I would like to talk about, and one thing is to offer a new contract for Vandenberg, but then you would have to get rid of the other guys, and I'll select some great American and British musicians for you, and you pick them." And I go, "Oh, interesting." And he said, "The other offer is, please join Whitesnake." And I said, "Well, I don't know, you know, Dave and I have been in touch every once in a while, and he's one of my heroes, you know, so I would have to think about it, because I would have to say goodbye to the Vandenberg guys, and that would make me feel bad, you know." But then he said, "Well, would you like to make a new arrangement for Here We Go Again and play guitar on it, just as a guest in the first, and see how you like it, you know?" So I said, "Oh, great." So I ended up staying for a week and hanging with David, and we got on great right away, you know. And we had a good time, and I heard the album was going to be great, but what a lot of people don't realize, David was in debt for about $2 million at the time, and he said, "I don't have a band, you know, and there's no money."
Yeah, this was make or break at the American market, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I said, "Well, I don't care, because I never made any decision in my musical career based on money, because it doesn't mix, you know, with the kind of music I like to play." I said, I just want to make great music, and we'll see where it goes. If it doesn't do anything, it doesn't care. I don't care, because then we make another album, and you know, you've got a strong base in Europe and in Japan, so we'll see what happens, you know. And at the time, Vandenberg was probably more popular in the States than Whitesnake, so at least there was a balance. That was the reason why I didn't join before, because I didn't want to be one of the guys in the revolving door of guitar players, and I would like to make a statement myself first, so there would be more of a balance between working with David. I mean,
and let's talk about the next album, Slip of the Tongue, because I say you wrote virtually every track on that album apart from one, and you sort of injured your hands due to isometric piano warm-up exercises. And exactly what is that, and what do you do?
It was a combination of that, and later I only found out about 10 years ago that it had to do with a car crash I was in right before Vandenberg. I developed a whiplash. I was hit from the back by a very heavy car, and bing bang bang. In those days, they didn't call it whiplash, it was called you have pain in your neck. And I knew that because it was very painful, you know. So 3 weeks later, it was over, and I started actually working in an advertising agency again, right opposite Angus Young, who I introduced to his wife, actually, and they're still married because she's from...
I think he lives on the border of Holland, France, doesn't he?
Yeah. And so I used to go for a cup of tea. Angus used to be making little paintings upstairs, and El and his wife would be running around with coffee and cookies. With cookies, people can lure me anywhere. So anyway,
this is not getting very rock and roll.
But where were we again?
Talk about isometric piano warm-up exercise injury.
The car crash was in those days, and but I forgot about it. And so during the Slip of the Tongue, I bought a little booklet with isometric exercises, has to do with you know, like exercises that you can do without equipment and stuff, for piano players, to keep your hands and your arms supple. So I thought that's probably a good thing to do, because I was playing about 12 hours a day, you know, practicing and recording on the same day, and I thought maybe it's a good thing to do. So one of the main exercises was really shaking your hands like crazy, and I thought, is it a good thing? I thought, well, you know, it says in the book. Stupid. You should never believe what you read. Apart when it's a great review about MOONKINGS, of course, then you should believe it. So I bought a book and I started doing all this exercise, and it started to feel strange, you know. And 2 days later, I woke up in the morning. Great start for a blues song, and I thought, something feels strange. So I picked up my guitar, and it was like somebody was holding my wrist. And I thought, that's not good. I didn't realize it was because of the exercises. But I thought, well, maybe I need a day rest, don't play for 1 or 2 days and stuff. And everybody in the studio was waiting for me. You know, pom-ti-dom, road crew, the studio people and stuff. And every day was like a few $1,000s. So I started feeling really shitty about it. And I went to see a local doctor, acupuncturist and stuff. After a week it was still not healed, so my dad called me up and he said, how's it going? I said, well, not so good. And so he says, I know this really great doctor who's specialized in musicians here in Holland. So I thought about it. I didn't want the burden of those guys breathing down my neck anymore, so I talked to David about it and said, well, we're going to have to do something else. You know, the album has to be finished. Of course, there's a lot of pressure because of the million-selling 87 album, and I'm gonna have to go home because I gotta take care of this, you know. I don't know what's going on. So we both decided Steve Vai would be the best pick because he would just left David Lee Roth.
So obviously you must be having visions of like, oh my God, David's going to sack me, get rid of me, I'm not wanted anymore. Was this going through your mind?
Not really, you know. I was more worried about my hands because I thought, man, I want to play, you know. And whatever needed to happen for the album needed to happen for the album, and for me a big relief was already having the pressure of all the stuff, so I could relax. And later on it appeared to be like the final thing that pushed the neck thing that aggravated that whole thing. So I had a neck operation and I removed the neck hernia a couple of years later, and that was it, you know. So
fantastic. And luckily you still well enough to do the tour, so that's great.
Yeah,
in 1990.
Yeah. It was a great tour, and I had a blast, and played Donington, man. A year before that I was in the crowd at Donington.
Oh wow.
It was that was one of the times when David asked me whether I was happy with what I was doing, but I was in Jimmy Page's studio recording the second Vandenberg album. And once again I couldn't say yes, you know, so it was a matter of time.
Actually, a favourite album of mine that you played on with David Coverdale is Starkers in Tokyo, the great little acoustic album.
Yeah.
And I believe you might be working acoustically with David again in the future, is that true?
Well, we always talked about it, you know, and that was also one of the reasons why this version of Sailing Ships was nice, because we talked about doing something like that somewhere in the future, whether it's a near future or a little bit further away, you know. Because for me, MOONKINGS is really everything now. I want to keep it together as a band, do tours, do records, and you know, I love to do it. At the same time, it doesn't mean that on the side you could do something like that, you know, so it's going to happen.
And just before I wrap up this interview, you mentioned earlier you did a song for your favourite football team, FC20.
Yeah.
Is it called, what was the song called? A Number One, that was it, sorry, yes. And obviously it must be a great honour. Well, everybody dreams of playing for the favourite football team, scoring a hat-trick. If you can't do that, next thing's write a song, a football anthem. So, do they play that song every day when they play a home game?
Yeah, they play in the stadium.
Yeah.
So I don't go there that often, but every time when I'm there, it's great to hear, you know. And,
of course.
You hear, it's like you're doing a show in the stadium, and then you have all the excitement of the game and stuff, and then yeah, it's great.
And obviously you've the British manager for a little while, Steve McLaren.
Yeah.
Here in England, we sort of call him the Wally in a volley for an unfortunate incident when England didn't qualify for the Euros. And you know, so what's your verdict on Steve McLaren?
Well, I shook his hand a couple of times, and I think he did really well. Just his comeback didn't work out the way.
He did all right first time round. I think he made you champions, I believe.
Yeah, the first time he did really well, and so when they kicked out this guy and brought Steve back in, everybody was hoping for a miracle. But you know, you have to be realistic, and the team lost two of its star players also, and the whole mental situation was not favourable, you know, for that. So I felt sorry for Steve because, you know, the first round he did great. So.
Great. And any fans of Adrian Vandenberg should go on YouTube and check that song out. So it's a good song. Adrian's been fantastic talking to you. The album's out on February 24th on Mascot Records. You're also playing some live dates in the UK on April 23rd in Wolverhampton at Robin 2 and April 24th London is an Academy. So look forward to that. Adrian's been fantastic talking to you. All the best for the future.
Thank
you very much. Cheers.
Bye. Thanks.